Welcome to another video from Monster Monday, the best way to start your week. We're going to start this one off with some Z's, specifically Zenless Zone 0. I've made another monster from this game to go with a recent trigger build, so let's take a look at the bouncing battler, the Banyrek. This is another one of the new monsters introduced in Season 2 of Zenless, and if I'm going to be completely honest, it's one of the more annoying ones. However, I do think it's also a very neat creature, with its obviously frog-like design and some of the abilities that it exhibits. I'm also curious about its lore. Was it just a frog that was corrupted into a miasma-spitting giant? Or was it something else entirely that was corrupted and twisted into its animalistic form? I'm not sure that we'll ever get the answers to these questions, but it does get me thinking, which in turn gets me making monsters. This particular one sits in between the Rebel Rouser and Flame Cantor at level 8, while it uses both the Aberration trait, but also the Animal trait, based on its more obviously bestial design. The Banyrek is a burly beastie, which I sought to emulate through a strength and constitution that are both between moderate and high, which means I actually went without a high value for its ability scores. Its dexterity and wisdom are both low, and its remaining ability scores are in the negatives, befitting its savage and bestial nature. For similar reasons, its perception is full out terrible, though it does have the benefit of dark vision akin to the other ethereals that I have made. On the skill side of things, its acrobatics is low, and mainly included because the giant frog and giant toad monsters had an acrobatics bonus as well. They also had an athletics bonus, just as our bouncy Banyrek here does, with the added bonus of going up to an almost extreme bonus when it is high jumping or long jumping. Aside from this obviously being based on the leaps that frogs are famous for, the Banyrek itself pulls off some pretty crazy jumps and bounds as part of its combat style. On the defensive side of things, the Banyrek is only hard to hit because it leaps around all over the place. It's otherwise a pretty big and slow target, which leads to the use of a moderate armor class. I have to admit, I'm always a little cautious about using such a value. While I haven't tested the Banyrek, moderate ACs always make my monsters feel rather fragile. It also has a weakness to cold damage, but to offset that and its more moderate AC value, it has a high pool of hit points. Like I said, it's a beefy boy, and that almost high constitution value it has needs to come in some sort of handy. It does come in further use with a high fortitude as the top of its fairly typical saving throws. It follows with a moderate reflex save, which is just based on its ability to hop and spring around, and then a low will save. Although its dexterity and wisdom are the same value, the general physicality of the creature leads me to grace it with a greater reflex than will. For the offenses of our Titanic Terror Toad, the Banyrek has 2 melee strikes, which both use a moderate attack bonus. I've noticed that the Banyrek likes to clap creatures between the palms of its forelimbs, so I included a claw strike with the Agile trait that deals moderate damage. It can hand out some hefty blows, but it isn't as though attacks are terribly hard to evade in ZZZ. With its jaws lacking the Agile trait, they are compensated with high damage, giving the Banyrek a nasty chomp if the heroes get too close. But it might not even be that nasty when you consider the rest of its abilities. At first glance, the Banyrek appears to be a rather simple creature with only 4 abilities in its arsenal. Its most important of those abilities is Miasmic Spit. This has some notable basis in the corruption crafts of the Flame Cantor, but is instead purely about spreading miasma, and thus covers a decently sized area that lasts for a longer amount of time. Creatures that enter or start their turn in this area have to make a moderate DC Fortitude save, or end up becoming drained. However, there's more to this ability than just that. If the Banyrek Spit recharges quickly enough, it can target the same area again to trigger an explosion that deals limited use area damage with a high DC Fortitude save. This damage is forced because I wasn't quite sure how to represent the ether of Zenless Zone 0. It's a difficult element to pin down. This trades the lasting draining effect of the pull into a single big burst, so it's just pure damage, with no other bells or whistles to it. However, the Banyrek does have another way to interact with these miasmic pools. While normally not immune to the effects of these pools, the Banyrek can drink miasma as an action with the Manipulate trait. This gives it a very limited buff, supplying it with a parcel of temporary hit points as well as bonuses to its strikes that bump them up to a high attack bonus and put their damage at high for its claws and almost extreme for its jaws. It took me a few encounters with the Banyrek to notice them actually doing this, and I struggled to find the details on what this buff state actually did for it, so I went for some more generally useful options rather than anything specific. We then leap back to take a look at the Banyrek's Bouncing Slam. The Banyrek is a bouncy bastard that likes to leap around the battlefield and has weaponized this very aspect of itself. I was debating how exactly I wanted to demonstrate the effect before settling on simply making it a high jump or long jump that, if the Banyrek goes far enough, causes it to land with enough force to deal unlimited use area damage with a high DC reflex save, and also turn the nearby ground into difficult terrain. I have one final ability to close out on, and one that I honestly added kind of late. Terrifying Croak is inspired by its bellow during Yi Xuan's trailer. Design-wise, this comes from the Boggards, which have an ability of the same name and similar design, though mine requires a high DC will save, which actually means that the Banyrek can force at least one of each save. I'm always a fan of diversifying saves in a creature's design, and while I'm not inclined to always hit the trifecta, it's fun to do so every now and again. But that does bring us to the end of the talk on our Titanic Toad. A bellowing beast born to bounce, the Banyrek bursts into the battlefield in a blaze of belligerence, bodying buddies with its bulk and bringing blight in bunches. This miasmic monster could certainly be run in a small group to really take advantage of its ability to create miasma pools, but it could also serve as a support for a Flame Cantor. A note in-game talks about using the Banyrek as a mount, and while it's shot down by the characters, I do think it's actually a fun concept and could make for a great encounter. Let me know what you think of this creature and what other sorts of monsters you'd like to see in a comment. If you like what you see here and want more, be sure to leave a like and then subscribe to the channel. You can also check out the blog, which is linked below along with the Twitter and Discord. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.
My blade is already heated.